Hi, it's Helen Tarrant.
Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant. Actually, today I'm going to do something different. Usually I'm on the road looking at properties, and later on this week I'll be showing you a property I've been looking at recently. But today I'm actually going to show you some comparisons with properties that are two uplift properties that are totally different and has potential, and that you can have a look at this property and look at it from a point of view of, do you want to go into a property that has a full uplift where you're going to be gutting it and doing all of the works, or do you want to go with a property that has a tenant already and that potentially you can develop on it? So I'm going to share my screen with you, and so you get to see what this property is, and I'm going to explain a little bit to you about the different properties. It just happens to be in a property, happens to be in Townsville. I saw this where I'm going on a contract with one property, and I just happened to see the other property, and I thought it'd be a great time to do a case study. So without much ado, let me share the screen with you and let me show you the different types of properties. So here, let me show you the first property. So this property here is actually a property in Atkinvale in Townsville. So this property is a martial arts studio, and it's now refurbished, and now it has a tenant in there. Excuse me. What I wanted to show you is the actual property itself. So you can see it's quite a large warehouse, and what it also does is actually has some land as well next to it. So the land next to it, it's about $120,000, $150,000 for the land, and it's already got a concrete slab on there. So you could build something else on there. It could make it easier for you to build something else. What I actually like about this is it's such a long property. It's got lots of roller windows, and it seems to have two entrances, and that's what I like about it, because in the future you could divide it into two type of properties. It's a great big warehouse shed, which means that later on you can potentially cut it into more, and there's a roller door here as well as side entrance. You can see the inside of it originally before it became tenanted. So it's a great big open space, which I like. It looks pretty neat and tidy. It's got obviously some facilities, and it's got some office space there, and we can see that it is great open plan as well. So this was what the property used to be like. And if you look at it now, it's that it's leased for about $42,000. Even though it's vacant possession, it has been leased now. It has a tenant in it, and which is why we're actually putting it under contract. So this property, one of the things about this property that I like is that it has a Tennessee 1, which is vacant, and Tennessee 2, which is leased until 2022. So one of these things that I like about it is that there's so much more potential on the place that is vacant, and that you don't need to do a lot of work for this property. You can probably just advertise really aggressively, or make the 600 square meter space into two lots of 300 and find a tenant. 10 on-site car spaces. It's a corner location, ideal for an investor or owner occupier, and it's selling for $600,000. So for me, when I look at this property, one of the things I want to look at is the outgoing. So I went out there and I found some outgoings, and I worked out that at the moment there's probably about $18,000 worth of outgoings that needs to come out. So out of that $30,000, we're getting about $12,000. Now, if you're buying this property for $600,000, then that you're going to make it a little bit under. So you're going to be a little bit negative with that property. But if you're able to add $42,000 onto your $12,000, and you're able to get that because the outgoing's already taken care of, then we're looking at $60,000 on its own as a net rental. Now, if you're buying $600,000, that's a 10% return. Now, of course, in there, I'm going to budget. I'm going to be giving some rental incentives. I'm going to be giving the tenant maybe some fit out incentives, and I may myself need to add partitions in there and change and move roller door. So it may cost me $50,000 or $60,000 in the whole process. So I want to take off that asking price. So for me, if I could get this property for the early 500s, then this is a great deal, because I know ultimately I'll be able to get over 10% yield on this property. I'll be able to increase the value of that property, and I'll be able to get a 10% return on that property. So that for me is an ideal purchase for a property. Now I want to show you the second property and why the second property is so fundamentally different. And you've got to ask yourself, which type of property do you prefer when you're looking at a property that you are potentially want to get into and do some work? Do you want a property that has a little bit of uplift or a massive amount of uplift, and how much work do you want to do? So this one is in 50 Allen Street, still in Townsville, a different part of Townsville. So here it's for sale at $390,000. It's a very cheap property. So let's have a look at the property. So it's got a tenant in there that is vacating. So we know the tenant's vacating, so it's on a short lease. If you were buying this property, you almost have to buy this property out with cash. Here we see that it's a freestanding building. Maybe here we need to look at what the boundary is. We have a look internally. It's not looking too bad internally. Look, the floor is looking quite tidy. Upstairs is looking quite tidy. It's got obviously amenities. I don't know why there's a pool table there, but there's not enough photos of it. Obviously, with something like that, we want to go in and have a look at it. But $390,000, I did inquire with the agent. The land is smaller than the other one, but it's taking up all of the space. The 500 square meters is all of that space. Now, it also is, compared to the previous one we looked at, where the land is 1,500 square meters and floor space is about half that size. So it gives a note to that. Obviously, it's cheaper at $390,000. Now, it has 3 car spaces. It's vacant possession totally, so you have to be able to support the bank. Alternatively, this is something you want to buy out with cash and do it up. So easy access, ideal for owner-occupier. Look, a holding income at the moment of $40,000 inclusive GST, so that's really $36,000. There's probably some outgoings. It's probably not as much as the $18,000, the other one, so maybe 10. So you're looking at maybe $24,000 at the moment as holding income. So if you did buy that property for around the early 300s, you'll still be able to make your mortgage repayments as well. So that's also good as well. But here we look at the building. It's 2 minutes from the CBD, so it's obviously sought after. It's 500 square meters. It's got roller doors, large air conditioning in the warehouse. We have to check if it's working. Private office space, 3 bathroom, male, female, including a shower, which is great. It's got at least the mode to theatre INQ 40,000, which expires at the end of this year. So you still have 10 months to go on this year. And there's no GST because it is a going concern. So with this property, one of the things that we need to look at is what is it we need to do. And so when I inquired with the agent, it says, look, the roof needs to be replaced and there's asbestos that needs to be removed into that property. So asbestos, you can get someone professional to remove it, so that's not an issue. And then obviously you need to replace, if it's removing it, you need to maybe replace it. So there's somewhere, he said, between $60,000 to $100,000 with cost. Now, for 500 square meters, $60,000 to $100,000 do seem a little bit high, but I would get some quotes on it, find out how much it is, find out how much it is to replace also how much to replace the roof as well. So for me, I might be looking at this property around that 300 mark. So maybe that 300, 310 mark in order for it to work, because I need to remove the asbestos and everything else as well. But if it's got a holding income of about 40,000, you could imagine that maybe potentially this property could be tenanted for a little bit higher once it's all done. And if you could get a little bit more for it, maybe perhaps around 42 to 45,000, you take out some of your costs, you add the GST on top of that, then we're looking at a property that is going to, over time, still going to give you a 10% return, but obviously it's a lot more work as well to it as well. So that's the big decision to make when you're looking at a property. Do you want something that's vacant, where you have to support it and there's a lot of work to be done before that property can be tenanted, and that you can get, it may need you to hold it for a 6-month period and rip out all the works before you can tenant it? Or do you want a property that already has an existing income in there? So when you're making that decision, looking at the properties, make sure you compare and also look at your time. So a property like this on 50 Allen Street, if you're looking at your time, how long it would take. For me, that's probably to start out with, for me to get quotes, phone calls and compare them, probably about half a day to start with. When they're actually doing all the works, I want to be engaging a local agent. That may take me a day, a week to be able to manage that or call and make sure it's all done properly. I may need to fly up 2 or 3 times to actually see the property to make sure the works are done properly. And then, of course, we've got leasing to make sure we'll be able to lease that property. Or if I decide to sell it, then I want to make sure that that property is done properly. So I want to make sure, of course, I'm there. So that's all of the costs that's involved in there. This one is pretty much set and forget. You've got the holding income from one side. You can talk to the agent about refurbishing the other side, find out where the line is and the partition is, and find out what amenities needs to be built, and go from there. So a lot of that can be done remotely. It will still take a little bit of time to start with, but probably not as much time as arranging quotes for asbestos and comparing and looking at putting a new roof on. So this place is purely for rental, or the other place will take a lot of work. So you've got to look at this of it, seeing how much time do you have to dedicate to this. If you've got a lot of time, then absolutely there is a no-brainer doing a deal like this. If you don't have a lot of time, then doing a deal where it's more set and forget would be right for you. So if you want help and you want to work out what's the best way to move forward, reach out to me at helentarrant.com and send me a message, and I look forward to helping you on your commercial property journey. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you at the next episode. Bye for now.